Well, hi everyone. It is good to be back with you. Just recently, we've started reading through a new book of the Bible, the book of Acts. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible, and I think I've said it before, but in case I haven't, I think the book of Acts could use a name change. In many of our Bibles, it's not just called Acts, there's a subtitle there, The Acts of the Apostles, and that's true to a point, but I think I'd rather call it The Acts of Jesus working through his apostles. Because what we're going to see is that Jesus continues to live and to act, even though he's not on this earth walking around the streets of Galilee and Jerusalem like he had been in the Gospels. It becomes very clear that Jesus is still present, and he's just doing his work now through his people. I love the book of Acts. What you see in the book of Acts is the life of Jesus replayed in the lives of his people. And so many of the things that happened to Jesus and that Jesus did in his life, the miracles, the persecutions, all of it ends up happening to his people as well through the lives of Peter and Paul and others too. I'd like for you to think for a moment, though, to imagine a scenario with me. And I promise I'll get back to the book of Acts. Imagine that you are an historian and you've recently taken part in an archaeological dig. This is exciting stuff. And in this dig, you're crawling around a cave somewhere and you find this ancient piece of literature. And as you uncover it, you realize that it is an ancient script to a play that had one time had been performed. And you start reading it. You read Act 1, and then Act 2, and Act 3, and Act 4. You come to Act 5. It's exciting stuff, but you realize you only have the opening sentences of that closing act, that there's more to the story that is not there with you. And so you come to see that it's your life calling to finish that story, right? To write the end of Act 5. Now, that might seem presumptuous to some, and maybe even impossible to others. How could you possibly finish the story? This story was first written thousands of years ago. So who are you to jump in and finish it? But you've come to see that this is your calling, that you want to write the end of the story. And you believe that it's possible, right? Because you have these 4+ acts in your possession, and you're able to put yourself in the shoes of those characters. You've heard about what's important and what's not. And so you go about the important work of writing the end of the story. Well, I ask you to imagine that scenario because I think that's kind of what it's like to read the Bible. We have this beautiful story, Act 1, where God creates the world. Act 2 very quickly comes on the scene that the world falls into sin. Act 3, God creates this new family, beginning with Abraham called Israel, that he guides and leads and uses to bless the nations. Act 4, Jesus comes onto the scene to fulfill so many of those promises made to Israel. We hear about his life and his death, his resurrection and his ascension. And then Act 5, which I think we began recently in the book of Acts, and then continues through the letters of Paul. This is just the beginning of Act 5, though, because the truth is we find ourselves in it as well. And it's our job, in a sense, to finish the end of the story, to read the rest of the book, chapters or Acts 1, 2, 3, and 4, the beginning of Act 5, and to reflect on it, to meditate on it, and to ask ourselves, how am I called in my own time and day to finish this story? Right? God hasn't given us a blueprint per se, and here's exactly what you need to do. You're going to wake up today and you're going to do X, Y, and Z, right? But we do have this wonderful book filled with God at work, living and working through his people. And it's our calling now to continue that story on, to continue on the work of Jesus, just like those apostles did in the book of Acts. And I think reading the Bible this way and reading Acts this way makes it exciting, right? It's not just some ancient book of dead words on a page, right, that we can close about and very easily forget, right? It's a source of life for us and guidance. It's a story that we're a part of. And what a story that is. Well, continue to submit your questions and your thoughts. Haven't gotten any in a little bit, so there's no questions to answer this week. I enjoy reading those, though, so please send them in. Would love to hear from you. God bless your week.